Okay. Hi, guys. It's Carlotta Holder.
And Jess Bell.
We're coming live from Jess's kitchen.
Excuse the mess.
And we have Katie joining us, and we have Erika joining us, author of I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. This is the EL chat that we just finished last week. We're getting ready to start a new one this next week, but we are very thankful that Erika was able to reschedule with us so we could ask her some questions about the book. So thanks for joining us, Erika.
Sure, thank you.
All right, Katie, I know you have a question.
My question was, I was wondering if any of the book comes from your own lived experiences, if any of it is based on you.
Sure, yeah, it's definitely fiction. I don't have a sister, didn't experience a death like that. But I did draw upon a lot of my experiences as a teenage girl growing up in Chicago. But it's hard to say what's real and what's not. It's a kind of a mash up of both.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
So Carlotta and I, we saw you speak at Purdue University. And I know that when we talked to you, you had said that the writing process was really long. I think you said 5 years.
Yeah.
When you were working on the book. So what are some of the inspirations, or what are some of the things that really spoke to you while you were working on this piece?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think of what inspired me. I think what kept me going was the idea of having a book that spoke to brown girls. I thought that was really, really important. And so that kept me going throughout the entire process. I wrote much of it as I was getting over a really severe depression. And so the book kind of helped me recover in many ways. So that was a really important time. And I wrote a lot of it during that time. And so I think what inspired me was that idea, like I said, of having a book that girls could relate to, they could see themselves in.
As an EL educator, my question is, were you an English language student growing up in Chicago?
I was not. I was never in any ESL classes. I was put directly into English classes.
Okay. There was a really powerful part, I think, for us EL teachers in your book, where Mr. Ingram says that, you're here to learn this language, but, you're also here. I want you to be able to succeed just as much as any other student. And I think that was extremely powerful for English language teachers, because we're constantly trying to teach our students that, regardless of the language, we expect you to be successful as native English speaking peers, right? So where did that come from in your book?
Yeah, that came from a lot of teachers that I had in high school that were really, really supportive. And I had one in particular who always talked about how language was power. And so that's where I drew on. It was based on several teachers, but one, I guess in particular, was really important to me as a student.
And I assume that teacher kind of said language is power, is that what sparked you to be a writer? That way?
Yeah, I had already decided I was going to be a writer. I decided that at 12 years old. So that was a very strange declaration on my part. My parents were very confused as to why I would want to be a writer. But, my teachers in high school kept me going. They really helped me. They inspired me, and they encouraged me with books, and they would give me feedback. And it was just a really an amazing experience to have teachers encourage me in that way.
So we kind of noticed that while we were reading the book, some of our educators, this might have been the first book that they ever kind of read about like their own kind of student. So as an author, what would you say to them about that?
Wow, that's powerful. I didn't realize that. I hope that the book helps teachers understand what a lot of students are going through. I hope that it helps them empathize and see them as, you know, complicated individuals. But yeah, I didn't realize that this is the first book that a lot of teachers read that related to their students. I mean, that surprises me. It surprises me and it doesn't at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I think your book does that not a lot of teen fiction really does is look at that cultural relationship, that struggle that a parent, a student, like a kid has when they are a first generation immigrant. And I see that when they're parent, you know, I see that with my students, and like a lot of my kids I've known for many years. So I see that relationship and we talk about it all the time. And, you know, my kids talk to each other about how their parent, it's so hard for them to relate to their parents and how hard that can be. And I know Carlota has some feelings about that. She'll share as in a few minutes. But it's really powerful, I think, for people who don't have that experience or who don't have a relationship enough with their students to know how hard that relationship can be with your parents, because your parents are like, we've sacrificed so much for you, and the kid's life is just so different than anything their parent ever experienced that it's really challenging. So I think that's one of the things that's really groundbreaking novel-wise, like for people to be able to empathize with that and see that as in a book. I don't have a lot of other experience. I read a lot of multicultural fiction, and there's not a lot of books that really explain that experience well, I think.
Yeah, I think too, for English language teachers, like not all of us are bilingual. For example, Jess isn't bilingual.
Jess is Spanish is malo.
Oh, okay.
It's not that bad.
But being bilingual, like we come up with these kind of conversations between parents and students, like Julia, where like they're like at their wits' ends with their parents, right? Because they've grown up in different cultures. They don't understand their parents' culture. Sometimes they don't even understand the language. And sometimes that's where us as an EL teacher has to come in. And we have to be the translator for the student and for the parent. And that's really hard. I think that if we are a teacher and we do have that like language background, we do learn those things about our families and our parents and those relationships. But the EL teachers that are English only, right, they don't have that opportunity. So I think that your book really shows like how important that is. And how, like, I think more self-conscious, I think I would say, that we need to be about it. About the relationships of our students and their parents because of this, you know, cultural difference and even language difference for that example. So is that part based on your life with your parents?
Yeah, I had a really hard time with my parents in high school. We really didn't understand each other, and I was very Americanized, and the parents are like old school Mexican people. And so it was just a constant conflict between us. I wanted to be independent and things like that. And my mom wanted me to be like
the perfect
family oriented and things like that. And that wasn't me at all. And so there was just a lot of arguments in our house.
So are you first generation Mexican American?
Well, yeah. Well, my parents immigrated from Mexico in the 70s.
Okay.
And I was born in Chicago.
I'm a first generation Panamanian American. So my mom is from Panama. So I kind of had the same. I could have used this book in high school. Probably would have saved my parents some money on like counseling sessions. But in kind of you know, I know you even said like growing up, like you had House on Mango Street. I had House on Mango Street, but like House on Mango Street is really safe. I'm not your perfect daughter. Like it's not safe, right? Like you definitely, I think break like glass ceilings with this book because of all the issues that are in it, that aren't in House on Mango Street.
Right.
Or that Gary Soto doesn't write about, because, you know, let's include some Gary Soto in multicultural. That happens a lot in secondary curriculum.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, it's time to diversify.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think your book is definitely not safe. Definitely something I could have used in high school. You know, but I'm happy that I have it now. If I ever have a daughter, I can pass it on to her, but I am a mom of boys. But it's definitely something I feel like with my students, I have some students in probably 8th grade, or they'll be 8th graders next year. And this book would definitely, you know, help them maybe even understand their parents a little bit more.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for hearing it.
Yeah, I have all juniors and seniors next year. And so it's going to be one of their choices for literature circles. And it not only has some great like relatability for them, but it also has some great like ways for me to segue into more college discussions, because it's part of what my curriculum is going to be for next year. And she takes that, like that process goes so seriously in the book for her. Like she's so set on leaving, right, that it really is going to open some opportunity, like some discussion opportunities. I think some kids that might have thought they didn't have that option, we can say, well, you know, Julia did it in the book. And so
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Katie, do you have any more questions?
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah.
Okay. I have 2 questions. One, I'm wondering if you're working on any other books. And then the second question, if you have any advice for aspiring authors, because within our group, we have a lot of authors who write books for teachers.
Sure.
But just, you know, I know that rejection is rampant when you're trying to get something published. And I'm just wondering if you have any advice or tips for any of us who haven't published that might be interested in trying to write a book.
Sure. Well, the first part of the question, I am working on another book, but it's a book of essays, and it's called Crying in the Bathroom. And it's about, you know, being a woman of color in this country and dealing with issues of sexuality and race and beauty and depression. I write a lot about that. And so it's not a young adult novel. I hope to write another one soon, but I'm pretty burned out at this moment. The book took a lot out of me, to be quite honest. So I think I need some time before I write another. And also advice for people who would like to publish, I would say, if I could go back in time and tell myself anything, it would be to make friends with rejection. That rejection is part of being a writer, and it's going to happen more often than not. And so not to be discouraged by the rejection, because there's going to be someone who believes in the work. And so that's what happened with me. A lot of agents rejected my book, but then I found the perfect agent, and she's been great. And so not to give up, just to keep looking for the person who's going to champion the book.
Thank you.
Sure.
In your book about the quince, is that based on you? Did you have a quince?
That you didn't want?
I didn't want one. So my mom didn't force me to have one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't have one either. And my dad felt bad when he was 17. So he threw me a big 17th birthday party.
Oh, wow.
He just kept on saying, I'm sorry.
Better late than never. I mean, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it wasn't really a quince, but like he just kind of was like, I didn't realize that this was a big thing or like important in your mother's culture, because my mother is very she's very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And she's definitely, I feel like at sometimes is assimilated to American culture.
Sure.
And she's very religious. So she never said anything. She never mentioned it until kind of like our Mexican population and our small community started to grow. And we got invited to quinces and stuff like that. And that's kind of when my dad realized that, like, oh, this is a part of the Latina culture and you're not 15 anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we missed this. So reading your book made me think of that as well. There's another book called Cuba 15 about a girl who is, have you ever read that book?
I haven't. That sounds interesting.
And she's in America. She's like first generation, and they want to put on this quince, and really they don't really start talking about it until she's like 14. And she's like, I don't even know what this is. I don't really want it. But in the process, I think she starts to learn about it. And then when the time comes, she's kind of like, oh, I'm glad I did this. But it definitely reminded me of that book to kind of pair with this one, which is another piece of fiction for students to read with this.
That sounds great. Yeah, I would love to read it.
Do we have any more questions? Oh, I'm sorry. I need to unmute you, Katie. How do I do it?
I did it.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. Can you really control my mute?
I don't know.
Stop talking, Katie. No, I don't think so.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. One of the things that we love about our book chat is we've had a really high success rate of the authors interacting with us, which just makes it so much more meaningful and special because we put a lot of these authors on a pedestal and it feels like meeting a celebrity. And we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Sure.
Yeah,
no, well, I appreciate you picking my book.
It was wonderful. We had a lot of excitement. There was a lot of people who kind of routinely do the chat, and your book brought in a lot of new people. We try to spread the word, but there was a lot of interest in doing a novel, and there was a lot of interest in doing a novel on this topic. And like you said, that features a female character who is brown.
Brown girl.
A lot of our participants really related to her, which is
awesome.
Which is great because a lot of our participants are former ELL students who are now teachers, and the fact that they can connect to the experience you've written about, and then they can be the teacher who connects with the students will hopefully give future generations of EL students a different school experience where they do feel like their teacher understands them and they feel more connected and not as kind of isolated and misunderstood. So we really appreciate the work that you created. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing it.
I think apart from what Katie said, what I'm also realizing is the issue of mental health that you bring in your book, which I think is, has become really apparent in the public with everything, right? Like you in the news hear about it. So for it to be brought in a book, I think is really powerful, but two, for it to also be brought into the Latino community where it is, I don't know your experience. My experience has been that it's been very like judgmental to have a mental health issue. Again, this is another reason why I needed this book in high school. But I remember in high school suffering from panic attacks and my parents just constantly saying like, oh, that's normal. It's normal. It's normal. And I was like, no, it's not normal. Like I've missed like 20 days of school because I can't get myself there because I have a panic attack on the way. And that's still something that we struggle with some of our parents and their students. And not just with mental health, even with like ADHD, ADD, learning disabilities, right? Like these are all things that we need the Latino community to accept so that we can help their students and their children.
Yeah.
And I think you really bring that to light with Julia when she starts talking to the doctor And she starts kind of like finding herself and, you know, pulling herself out of like that black hole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I thought it was really important to talk about mental health because it is very stigmatized in our community, and it's unfortunate that it's often seen as, you know, like a personality flaw when in fact it's an illness, and it can be treated. And I wanted to show that treatment was possible and that recovery was possible. And so I wanted, you know, young girls to see some hope in, you know, their situation.
Yeah. And I think us as teachers reading about it, all we can do is be their advocate, like Mr. Ingram tries to do, as he checks on Julia constantly after the tragedy. You know, that's also what, I mean, we probably spend more time with our students than the parents do, and we notice that. So, you know, showing that kind of relationship as well, I think with that kind of, you know, stigma behind mental health issues is definitely powerful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I was hoping to make some change with that in the book. I really wanted parents to understand what it's like for, you know, young people to experience this illness.
Yeah. This would be a great book for students and parents to read together.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be helpful for parents. And it's also being translated to Spanish.
Oh, yay. It's not yet?
No, not yet. My contract is somewhere here, actually.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Especially for the parents, because then that's definitely doable with the parents. There's California started a Latino Literacy Project, which is a family engagement project, and they read, I've never read the story. It's called Gabriella, but I feel like the story would probably be a lot more beneficial than that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, short.
What?
Never mind.
All right. I'm sorry. I thought of that mental health question at the last minute, and I just had to bring it up. But yeah, thank you so much for rescheduling this Google Hangout with us.
Yeah, sorry I missed the first one.
Oh, no problem. I understand.
Yeah.
But we really think that, you know, we're going to be able to get your book into a lot of students' hands and hopefully give them some hope, like you said. And if not, at least we touch some teachers that can give their students some hope because they read your book.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing the work. I think that's really powerful and it's necessary. So thanks a lot for that.
Yeah. There were lots of tears from a lot of people in our book chat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I can't say I was one of them. I never cried when I read books. I don't know why. I've never cried when I read a book. But I mean, there was like people tweeting that like I'm in the airport and I just bawled my eyes out because I just.
But so many people too that read it that said I couldn't put it down because we had a reading schedule and it was stretched out over 5 or 6 weeks. And many people within the first couple of days said, I finished it, I couldn't put it down.
Oh, that's great. So, wonderful to hear.
And then she had to like keep her mouth shut of like, oh my God, hurry up and finish the book. Like, I want to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And I just had a baby. So I was like, I'll get there. And then when I finally finished that, I was like, I can't believe that you kept your mouth shut this whole time.
It was a challenge.
It was
worth it.
But the plot twist, so many plot twists in it too, is what makes it so difficult to put down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think
that was the intent. So I'm glad it turned out that way.
Yeah. I think that'd be really like, even like writing wise to teach students like all these things that happen in this book, you know, like the plot twists are just so good.
We don't really need to have a discussion about how the plot, it's not really a triangle.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need that. Just like, it's fine.
This is a roller coaster.
We're not doing a plot diagram. Listen, it's not gonna happen.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end our live feed. I hope some of you guys were able to tune. Oh, we have 0 viewers, but they'll look at it later.
We will.
They're really good at watching it later.
And if you're ever curious to see what some of our readers said, you can just search the hashtag EL Chat Book Club. You know, a lot of really amazing things, and I think lives that it touched like me, where we all were like, oh, I needed this book when I was in high school or middle school or whatever. But at least we get some sense of closure reading it now.
Well, I'm glad I could provide that for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.